Hey there, my fellow minor league nerds, and welcome to our latest Franchise History Series episode. This episode is about the Richmond Virginians who played in the International League from 1954 to 1964. We covered them in our old Throwback Thursday Cap of the Day series, making this our 10th expanded and recut version of that series. Before we start the episode, we have a few housekeeping items to announce. When we first started the Minor League Nerd, we didn't have a set schedule for our episodes. It wasn't until earlier this year that we started releasing them every Thursday. Starting after this episode, we're going to go back to not having a fixed schedule, with a plan to release new episodes anywhere from a week to 2 weeks apart. Also, shortly we're going to be starting a new series called Minor League Nerd Story Break. These episodes are going to be just a few minutes long, telling brief, interesting stories from minor league history. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the episode. When the St. Louis Browns of the American League were sold by Bill Veeck and relocated to Baltimore for the 1954 season, becoming the Orioles, the AAA International League team of the same name needed to find a new home. They would move to Richmond, Virginia, becoming the Richmond Virginians. But the story of baseball in the Virginian capital starts in the 1870s. Local shoe factory owner Henry Boshin was advised by his doctor to take up some form of outdoor recreation. He listened to his doctor and took a bat and a ball to a vacant lot and would toss the ball up and hit it. No surprise, he got bored with this. Around the same time, local teams began organizing in the city along neighborhood, ethnic, and occupational lines. Two notable teams were the Atlantic Club and the Richmond Baseball Club, for which Boshin played. He is credited as one of the several men who invented the spitball, using slippery elm to produce more saliva. To improve his curveball, he is reported to have paid a man from Washington $25 to come to Virginia to teach him. He formed the Richmond Baseball Club in 1882 by recruiting players from his factory. A few future major leaguers played for his team, including pitcher Charlie Ferguson, who later played for the Philadelphia Athletics of the National League, outfielder Edward Mouse Glenn, who enjoyed 3 seasons of major league play, mostly in the American Association, Billy Nash, who spent 11 years with the National League's Boston Beaneaters, today the Atlanta Braves, and Edward Pop Tate, who also played in Boston. In 1884, a ballpark in Richmond, located on Mayo Island, would be named Tate Field in his honor. Boshin's team would play at Boshin Field, also called Richmond Baseball Park, which was located near the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Railroad yards. The success of the team gave rise to a grandstand, which included 2 private boxes on each end for female fans. Admission was charged, but the team appears to have been completely funded from Boshin's own pocket. His semi-pro team would hold its own during its frequent games against the Major League Washington Nationals, as well as teams from Baltimore and Philadelphia. Boshin once arranged for his team of white players to take on an African-American team called the Swans. Advertisements for the game promoted the Swans team as including a star player named Fowler, quoting here, "the only colored professional in America." This was most definitely Hall of Famer Bud Fowler, the earliest known African-American player in organized professional baseball. The end of Boshin's team began in June 1883, when 18 men formed the Professional Virginia Baseball Association in order to secure a franchise in an established league. Many of Boshin's players left his team to become pro. He continued to field teams into 1885. He expanded his ballpark and included players from other cities into his team, but his efforts weren't enough, as organized professional teams won out. In 1884, the Eastern League was formed, and Richmond was one of the charter members, with the team being known as the Richmond Virginians. They played at Virginia Park, which was located at the west end of Franklin Street. By the end of July, the team was 28-30. They were lured to join the Major League American Association after the Washington Statesmen dropped out of the league. They would complete the Statesmen's schedule. They didn't fare too well, only going 12-30. Following that season, the American Association contracted from 12 to 8 teams, with the Virginians being one of the eliminated teams. They would rejoin the Eastern League for the 1885 season, but would not return for the 1886 season. When the Orioles relocated to Richmond in 1954, it was actually the second time this happened. From 1906 to 1914, a team named the Richmond Colts played in the Virginia League. After the 1914 season, they moved to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and played as the Rocky Mount Carolinians. The move was made to make room for the relocating Baltimore Orioles of the International League, who began play in 1903 after the original Montreal Royals moved to town. In 1914, the Orioles saw competition in Baltimore from the Baltimore Terrapins of the upstart Federal League, which attempted to position itself as a third major league. The Orioles stayed in town and competed against the Terrapins, though it was extremely difficult as they received almost no press in the city. Jack Dunn, who owned the team and was a former ball player himself, built a superb team, knowing he would need one to compete with the Terrapins. They sat in first place by the middle of the season, but fans did not turn out, with attendance dropping to as little as 150 per game. During the season, he looked to relocate to Richmond. A group of local investors were interested in buying 49% of his team, but the Virginia League insisted on a $45,000 fee for moving into one of their franchise cities. The deal fell apart when the other International League owners voted down the requested move. Needing cash to keep his team afloat, Dunn had no choice but to sell his best players, one of which was Babe Ruth. He first offered the future Hall of Famer to the reigning World Series champion Philadelphia Athletics, but Connie Mack had his own financial issues. The Cincinnati Reds and the New York Giants both expressed interest in Ruth, but Dunn ended up selling him, along with pitchers Ernie Shore and Ben Egan, to the Boston Red Sox of the American League on July 4th. The sale price was announced as $25,000, but others reported that it was half that and possibly as low as $8,500, plus the cancellation of a $3,000 loan. After selling off 6 of his players, Dunn vowed to never again sell off one of his stars until he had a replacement ready. After finishing the season in 6th place with a 72-77 record, Dunn did not want to face competition once again, so he transferred his depleted club to Richmond after local sports enthusiasts raised $12,500 as a territorial compensation for the Colts. The team would be dubbed the Richmond Climbers. They opened the 1915 season in front of 10,000 fans, with league president Ed Barrow, the mayor of Richmond, and the governor of Virginia all in attendance. They finished the season in 7th place with a 59-81 record. Right-hander Allen Rubber Arm Russell won the strikeout title with 239 Ks and a 21-15 record. He would make his major league debut with the Yankees on September 13th of that season and would go on to have an 11-year career in New York, Boston, and Washington in the American League. Before the start of the 1916 season, peace would be made between the American and National Leagues and the Federal League, with most teams in the Federal League receiving some sort of buyout. The Baltimore Club was one of the only ones that did not receive an offer. They would end up suing, stating that the buyouts were a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The resulting case led to the Supreme Court deciding in 1922 that the scheduling and playing of baseball games did not constitute interstate commerce in any sense envisioned by the framers of the Constitution. Therefore, the Sherman Act and other federal laws and regulations did not apply to baseball. With Baltimore now being open, Jack Dunn asked for and would receive his release from managing the Climbers and sold his 53% of the Richmond club to local investors in order to start up a new team back in Baltimore. The Climbers would be led by career minor leaguer William A. Smith for the 1916 season, and it wouldn't be much better as they would finish in 6th place with a 64-75 record. He returned in 1917, but was relieved of his duties after leading the team to a 9-22 record. Former major leaguer Otto Knabe, who actually managed the Baltimore Terrapins in their 2 seasons, would take over, going 44-72 with the team, seeing them finish in last place with a 53-94 record. On April 6, 1917, the United States joined the Great War. Due to wartime conditions, it looked as if the International League would not operate in 1918. Secretary of War Newton Baker had issued a work or fight order, which mandated that draft-age men engaged in work not considered essential to the war effort, such as professional baseball, would become subject to the draft. At a league meeting on March 28th, the owners voted to disband. Immediately after that vote, several owners scrambled to protect their investments with the new International League being organized. Baltimore, Buffalo, Toronto, Rochester, and Newark agreed to continue in the league. The teams in Providence, Montreal, and Richmond were all dropped and replaced by Jersey City, Binghamton, and Syracuse, who would relocate to Hamilton, Ontario on August 6th. Some believe the disbanding and reorganization of the league was just a way to squeeze out the 3 teams, as it was said that they were too distant for the league to operate profitably under the wartime conditions. The new league began a 128-game schedule on May 8th. The Richmond Colts would return that season, playing in the Virginia League through 1924. Another Colts team would join the Eastern League in 1932, with the league folding on July 17th that season due to the strains of the Great Depression. Eddie Moores, who spent 11 seasons in the minor leagues and would be dubbed Richmond's Mr. Baseball, would buy the team by assuming the club's debt and move them to the Class B Piedmont League. He would build a new ballpark named Moores Field that had a 4,500-seat grandstand and bleachers that seated another 6,000. When the Orioles club was forced out of Baltimore for a second time following the 1953 season in order to make way for the relocating St. Louis Browns, they were owned by Harry Seibold. He looked to move them to Richmond. The International League contacted Moores about renting or buying his stadium, but he insisted on such difficult conditions that Seibold looked elsewhere. Moores ended up selling the territory to Seibold, then moved his Colts to Colonial Heights, Virginia, where they would play as the Colonial Heights Petersburg Colts for 1 season before folding. The Piedmont League would only play for 1 more season in 1955 before folding as well. With a deal for Moores Field unable to be reached, Seibold moved his team into Parker Field, which was built in 1934 as part of the fairgrounds. It would be quickly upgraded to meet AAA standards thanks to pledges from Richmond citizens, with more than $200,000 being raised within 2 hours. Moores Field was converted for stock car races, with it being purchased by real estate developers in 1958 who would tear it down and redevelop the property. Seibold would rename his team the Richmond Virginians, often shortened to the Vs. In their first 2 seasons, the Virginians were independent, not operating with any major league club. They were managed by longtime White Sox shortstop and future Hall of Famer Luke Appling, and were not successful. In that first season under Appling, they finished in 7th place with a 60-94 record, though they had the 3rd highest attendance in the league at 223,981. Appling returned in 1955, with the Virginians finishing in last place with a 58-95 record. Their attendance plummeted to 126,607. After that second season, the IRS would seize the team from Seibold due to him owing back taxes. It would be sold to a consortium of local businessmen in November for $20,000. The New York Yankees came to town in April 1954 and 1955 to play exhibition games against the Virginians. They would win both games. In front of 16,000 fans in 1954, they downed the local team 7-2 and dominated them 17-4 in 1955 in front of 7,000 fans. In April 1957, the Vs would beat the Yankees 6-5 in an exhibition game before 10,489. Also in April 1955, they lost 10-3 to the Kansas City Athletics in an exhibition game, while the Boston Red Sox defeated the New York Giants 5-2 in another exhibition game at Parker Field, which drew 12,640. Before the start of the 1956 season, the team's new owners were able to strike an affiliation deal with the New York Yankees. Former Major Leaguer Eddie Lopat, who spent 8 seasons with the Yankees, was hired to manage the team, a position he would hold for 3 seasons. He also started 21 games for the Virginians that season, finishing 11-6 with a 2.86 ERA. In his first season leading the team, they would finish in 5th place with a 74-79 record, with their attendance increasing to 214,533. Outfielder Len Johnson hit .294 for the Vs with 40 stolen bases, winning the first of 3 consecutive stolen base crowns. Lopat would not pitch in 1957, but Jim Coates won the strikeout title, fanning 161, ending with a 14-11 record. Fellow right-hander Bill Bethel was equally effective, finishing 15-7. First baseman John Jasiuk posted the league's second highest batting average, hitting .322. That season saw the first of only 2 winning seasons for the Vs and their highest attendance when 258,861 fans came out to Parker Field. They finished in 3rd place with an 81-73 record, qualifying for the postseason. They fell in 6 in the opening round to the eventual league champions, the Buffalo Bisons. They slipped to 6th place in 1958, ending with a 71-82 record. Former Major Leaguer Steve Suchak would lead the team in 1959 and 1960, taking them to back-to-back postseason appearances. They finished 59 with a losing record of 76-78, but it was good enough for the last playoff spot. They finished last in team hitting with a .236 average. Left-hander Bill Short finished 17-6 with a 2.48 ERA and 133 strikeouts in 178 innings pitched. They gained a measure of revenge on the Buffalo Bisons, taking them down in 5, but fell to the Havana Sugar Kings 4-2 in the Governor's Cup Championship Series. 1960 would see their second winning record when they finished in 2nd place with an 82-70 record. Once again, they were knocked out of the playoffs in the first round by the Rochester Red Wings. Their last 4 seasons saw the team decline as they suffered 4 straight losing seasons. 1961, their attendance fell to only 31,232 for an average of just 406 per game, though it did increase greatly their last 3 seasons. The Yankees had taken over ownership of the club in 1959. On December 5, 1962, they sold the team to a retired New Hampshire supermarket operator and former special envoy to Africa for President Kennedy, who had the fantastic name of Romeo Champagne. Neither he nor the Yankees were able to turn the club around. At the 1964 winter meetings, Champagne sold them to new owners who moved them to Toledo, Ohio for the 1965 season, where they became the Toledo Mud Hens, remaining affiliated with the Yankees. They're still playing today as the Mud Hens. The original Mud Hens of the American Association, the ones that Corporal Max Klinger of MASH was a fan of, they had relocated to Charleston, West Virginia during the 1952 season and then folded following the 1960 season. Richmond would only go one season without a professional baseball team. Before the start of the 1966 season, the Atlanta Crackers, who were forced out of Atlanta when the Braves relocated there from Milwaukee, moved to Richmond to become the Richmond Braves. After 43 seasons in the Virginia capital, they moved back to Georgia before the start of the 2009 season, becoming the Gwinnett Braves, changing their names to the Gwinnett Stripers in 2019. Once again, Richmond would only go one season without baseball. In 2010, the Connecticut Defenders of the Eastern League would relocate to the city, becoming the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Well, my fellow minor league nerds, that'll do it for this episode. We want to thank you for all your support. We definitely do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast platform of your choice to be notified whenever a new episode is released. And until next time, stay safe, and remember to never stop supporting minor league baseball and never stop learning about minor league baseball history.
This podcast is part of the Curved Brim Media Network. Here are some of the other members of Curved Brim Media.
Hi, this is Ed Rivera of the Data Chronicles. Join me as I interview people just like you and players, coaches, GMs on the path that led you to become a fan of the sport.
I'm Paul Caputo, and on the Baseball by Design podcast, I talk to minor league baseball teams, designers, and other super interesting people about what these minor league baseball logos mean, and I talk a little bit about ice cream helmets.
What's up, Bucketheads? I'm Anna DiTomaso, and each week on the Baseball Bucket List podcast, I speak with a different fan about their favorite baseball memories, what the game means to them, and what's left to check off on their baseball bucket list.
Hey everyone, it's Eric from the great state of Kansas.
This is Johnny from the New Orleans Baby Cakes Memorial Museum.
And we are the Earn Fun Average podcast,
where we talk to a variety of guests about their love of baseball and have fun doing it.
America, lower your standards.
Average is what we do best.
This is Patrick
and Corey
of BaseballMapper.com, and we have made an interactive map to help highlight all baseball teams from the majors down to collegiate summer leagues.
We want to bring you closer to baseball, so get on the site and find a team near you today.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Larson from the Minor League Baseball Hat History Series, and in every episode I go through the history of minor league teams through my personal collection of hats. You can find me on Twitter at PatLarson1. I hope you guys enjoy.
Learn more about Curved Brim Media at curvedbrimmedia.com.